The name's Ross, Emily Ross, and I'm here to tell you about hard-boiled crime. I am no expert in literary studies, but I am a Deakin University student, and this is my multimedia assignment for ALL102 from Harder Romance Genre and its revisions. Let's begin. The texts that I will be discussing in this video are Raymond Chandler's and Dorothy Porter's The Monkey's Mask. It just started raining. How fitting. First, a quick overview of these creative texts. The Big Sleep, what's going on there? To break it down, we have Marlowe, the private detective, the general who hires him, his two daughters, the Sternwood sisters, Carmen and Vivian, and an array of other characters feeding into a complicated plot involving blackmail and murder. Turns out Carmen is responsible for the murder of Rusty Regan, a dear friend of the general and Vivian's significant other. Vivian helps to cover this up, by the way. For the purposes of this discussion, that's all you need to know for now. How about Dorothy Porter's The Monkey's Mask? In this verse novel, a young woman, Nikki, is missing. Jill, our private detective, falls in love with Mickey's poetry lecturer, Diana. Together, they sift through Mickey's poems to find answers. Plot twist, Diana and her husband Nick are responsible for Mickey's death. The critical text I will be drawing upon in my analysis is Body Tracking, Sex and Crime in Dorothy Porter's The Monkey's Mask by Rose Lucas. Details of reference text can be found in the caption of this video. Lucas covers a range of topics in relation to Porter's text. She discusses how the body, specifically women's bodies, are represented in this story of crime fiction. She talks about the function of poetry in this text and gender roles, and how the story revises the genre of crime fiction. Now I know what you're thinking. What's the big idea here? Well, here's my argument based on one key idea from Lucas's article. The Monkey's Mask revises gender roles as a means to revise the genre of hard-boiled crime. I will also explain how Chandler's novel fits into this. On page 34 of her article, Lucas explains how Porter's text, quote, creates a set of characters of different biologies who are mapped across a range of gendered behaviors. This is how the text is revisionary. Lucas also points to a specific element of hard-boiled crime fiction, saying, quote, the detective protagonist is compromised, most often through sexual encounter with a femme fatale. Let's talk about that. Assuming you're aware of what a femme fatale is, it's obvious that Diana is our main femme fatale in The Monkey's Mask. Nick is also considered a femme fatale, further rearranging gender roles in the text, along with our private detective being a woman. Anyway, back to Diana. You might be thinking, what is so revisionary about having a woman being deceitful, the betrayer, dangerous, and reinforcing the age-old notion of women being inherently guilty? Seriously, ever heard of Eve? The key thing to remember about Porter's text is that Diana and Nick are both responsible, and the presentation of Diana as a femme fatale is far from two-dimensional. She does not only entice Jill with her body, but also with her intellect. The point made is that we don't have to get rid of the femme fatale, we just need to update her in order to revise the genre of hard-boiled crime. We need to retain the fact that she's smarter than we think, just as dangerous as a man, strategic and in control of the situation. So how does Chandler's novel fit into this? Some readers say Carmen is the failed femme fatale. Some say it's Vivian. Some say it's both. Let's go with that. Carmen and Vivian share the qualities of the femme fatale. She needs to be conventionally beautiful, deceitful, intelligent, and ambitious. Let's stop here and face the facts. Chandler's novel is problematic in a number of ways. Racist, homophobic, and sexist views are expressed, which I am not comfortable repeating. Go read it and you'll see what I mean. Aside from that, there is a point to be made about a femme fatale who does not succeed in distracting the detective protagonist by offering her body. What is that point? It's subjective. We could say that Marlowe doesn't have to be at the mercy of a beautiful woman and unable to control his sexual desires. Maybe it's that the purpose of the femme fatale shouldn't just be to get in the way, but to also try everything to save herself from getting caught. Seems like that's what all the men are trying to do. A problem with how women are represented in Chandler's novel is by how they are first described and continue to be described. It's all about how beautiful they are. Marlowe says in regard to Vivian's legs, they seem to be arranged to stare at. In Porter's text, Jill just so happens to make a similar comment. Mickey had legs that would have stopped traffic. Interesting. That's right. I'll make a note here that Porter's 1994 verse novel is not perfect either. Yes, we have LGBTQ+ representation with our protagonist Jill, who is a lesbian. However, the story, possibly unintentionally, reinforces stereotypes about bisexual or pansexual people. Diana has relations with men and women. Specifically, she has a relationship with Jill without her husband knowing, as far as we know. In retrospect, he probably knew. But for the reader, they see a bisexual woman cheating, for lack of a better word, therefore supporting the bizarre notion that people of her sexual orientation cannot commit to a monogamous relationship. Also problematic. What was our big idea again? Gender roles and revision. Trigger warning for this next part. In the monkey's mask, Mickey's body was found, quote, sexually assaulted, strangled, and dumped, according to Jill. Porter sets us up to immediately assume a man bears the sole responsibility for this crime. Sure, that tracks considering what really happens in this world, but that's just not how the story ends. So how are we to find some kind of conclusion amongst all of this? Let's think about the title, The Monkey's Mask, and also why Marlowe didn't turn Vivian and Carmen in at the end of The Big Sleep. In the final poem of Porter's text, Jill describes Mickey, quote, growing dark, she's wearing a monkey's mask. The message is that we all wear a monkey's mask, meaning no one is innocent, we all put up a front. Marlowe doesn't turn the Sternwood sisters in because he's done some bad things too. In this way, gender is removed altogether. More so in Porter's text than Chandler's. I suppose we can also say there are elements of revision, or at least pointed techniques in both texts that relate to the representation of gender. That was all the information I'm able to disclose at this time. Tell no one or risk your life. This has been hard-boiled crime. I was never here.